What is up, everybody? We have week 11 on deck. We have a very special guest for you guys. Momentarily, we'll be bringing him in, but I cannot wait to dive into this week's show where we look back at week 10 a little bit, and then we're going to turn the page onto week 11. And we're going to go through a number of different topics here. We're definitely going to hit on the Houston Texans and their commitment to the bit of setting up CJ Stroud for failure. We're definitely going to be hitting on Daniel Jones, some new information out there after their last week's loss to the Carolina Panthers over in Germany. Their flight back, what Adam Schefter is saying about it, what my reaction is to what Adam Schefter is saying as it relates to franchise quarterback Daniel Jones. Caleb Williams, we saw their offensive coordinator just got fired, Shane Waldron. What does that mean for Caleb Williams? Who is responsible for Caleb Williams' struggles? We're going to get into all of that as well. We're going to preview Thursday night football with our special guest. In addition to that game, which he is calling, I might as well tell you, it's Ross Tucker. We're going to be bringing on Ross Tucker. If you don't know Ross Tucker, I'm sure you probably follow him on social. He does a lot of the games, national broadcast games. He's doing the Eagles-Commanders Thursday night football game with Ian Eagle, who's one of the best play-by-play guys in the business. And Ross and Ian are going to be broadcasting the Eagles-Commanders Thursday night game. What better time to bring Ross in to preview that game? In addition, we're going to be talking with Ross about some of the most disappointing quarterbacks in the NFL to date. We're going to be talking about some of the most disappointing teams in the NFL. We're going to be going over the state of running backs and some of these veteran running backs that have been signing deals to very progressive and forward-thinking teams as free agents this offseason. We saw Howie Roseman step up, sign a running back in Saquon Barkley this past offseason in free agency. We also saw the Baltimore Ravens, an AFC counterpart with a very forward-thinking, analytically driven front office, roll the dice and sign Derrick Henry to a big deal. And both Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley are certainly working out extremely well for those respective teams. So we're going to be diving into that a little bit as well. In addition, we're going to be hitting on strength of schedule. And there's a lot to talk about strength of schedule, particularly after that Miami Dolphins upset victory in Los Angeles against the Rams. Miami, only 3 wins. But what does this schedule set them up to potentially do down the stretch? And we'll talk about all 32 teams in their remaining strength of schedule, including those Chicago Bears, what we should be learning out of their strength of schedule. So as you can see, it's going to be an action-packed show. I'm really looking forward to diving into the topics. As a reminder, if you guys are not watching over on YouTube, you can do that and you can participate in the chat. We've got everyone like and subscribe by Exile Cultivation. Exile, good to see you again, my friend. We've got UNC Sucks 2122. There you go. Certainly shout out your username. If you got a funny username, we'll give you a plug there as well. But let's go. We've got a big show again. So if you want to participate over in the chat, ask me some questions that I will answer. We'll be doing that later on in the show and sprinkle in throughout the show as well. So go over to YouTube, search for Sharp Football Analysis. That's how you get access to the interactive chat. Certainly happy that you guys are watching us over on X as well and checking us out live there too, because we're streaming there as well. Before we get into the first topic, this is one of the most special weeks of the year. For you guys, it should be the most special week of the year. That's because it's free week. This week is free week. What does that mean? 1 week out of the year, we pull back the curtain. What Jerry Jones does every single week. We pull back that curtain and we expose everything that paid subscribers get access to over at Sharp Football Analysis. We want to show you what we do on a weekly basis because it's not just me. We have a team of people that work our tails off every single week, starting Sunday night once those stats start to come in, all the way through the next Sunday, giving you access and giving you information and providing great detailed analysis, unlike you'll find anywhere else And we do that every single week for our paying subscribers behind the scenes. Well, this week, all of that is 100% free. 100% free. Now, why else should you go and check it out? Everything is free. That's easy enough, like a very low hanging fruit. Well, because this has been the best season that we've ever had to date from an accuracy perspective, from a betting picks perspective. Props, sides, totals, pro, college. We're up over everything. $100 better is up $9,794 betting all of our picks that we've recommended to paying clients so far this season. And so if you want to get involved in that and you want to see what that's like for 1 week for free, nothing you have to pay for this week of action, go to sharp.football and you can get it all for free this week. We do this once a year. This is the week. So don't think that we're going to roll this out again. You might have missed out on the first 10 weeks. You don't have to miss out on the 11th week. All of our betting recommendations, all of our props, all of our detailed game previews and predictions. We do a detailed game preview for every single game, highlighting every single player that you might need in fantasy, every single player that you might want to bet a prop on, over or under. We give you takes whether we like this guy or don't like this guy. All of that's included in the game previews and predictions that are up there. We have fantasy analysis. We have waiver wire. We have DFS. Everything's on your client dashboard. And not only that, I mean, this is what separates us from other services. Not only do we give you everything for free this week, we also text all of the picks to you. And that is also free. As you can imagine, that's not cheap for us to do that for how many people want to. We text everything for free to our paid clients anyways. Free texting for all of it. But we're still texting it to you. You guys are going to get experience an exact week that a paying subscriber does, just as they do, for free. So you get the dashboard, you get all the picks, you get all the written analysis, and you get it all texted to you for free. So go to sharp.football and click the link at the top, and you can get everything for free. All right, let's dive into the Houston Texans. Matt, the first topic. All right, last week, 44% of the Houston Texans set of downs. That means they got a 1st and 10. That's a set of downs. Anytime they have a 1st and 10, that's a new set of downs. 44% of those ended with a 3rd and long. They had a 3rd and long. They gained not enough yardage on 1st down to skip 3rd down. They gained not enough yardage on 2nd down to skip 3rd down. And they gained not enough yardage on both of those downs combined to bypass a 3rd and long, 3rd and 7 plus. We're talking almost 50% of the Houston Texans set of downs was a 3rd and long as a result of their early down inefficiency. That was the worst last week for any team by far. On the season, they ranked 31st in the NFL out of 32 teams, obviously, in percentage of downs that reach 3rd and long. That is not a bug. That is a feature of Bobby Slowick's Houston's Texans offense. And I won't belabor the point, but I do want to tell you that we predicted this in the offseason and recorded videos about why they needed to avoid this, because we saw this happening last year and we said, well, CJ Stroud's in his rookie season. And so we're not going to completely overlook this, but we might forgive it a little bit because CJ Stroud's a rookie. But no, this is continuing on into his 2nd season where we should be getting that jump, sophomore jump, not a slump, but a jump from CJ Stroud. We're not getting that jump. And the reason we're not getting that jump, yes, Nico Collins has been out, but in part it's because of their play calling, that they're continually forcing CJ Stroud to play Superman on 3rd down. And there's only so much Superman that a guy can pull off every single week and then every single week after week after week. Last week, the Texans ran the ball 14 times. This is on Sunday Night Football against the Detroit Lions. 14 times on 1st down. If that seems like a lot, that's a lot. 14 runs by their running backs on 1st down. The results of those runs, 2.2 yards per carry, 7% success. 7% success. Minus 0.36 EPA per rush. That ranked 27 out of 28 teams. The longest of their 12 rushes on 1st down by running backs was 6 yards. No explosion by Joe Mixon, no burst, just there. Just a play that you're just basically saying, give me 2nd and 9. Let's just play for 2nd and 9. If you give me a yard, we'll take a yard, right? And so, do you not think that over on the other sideline, Dan Campbell would say, "Hey, go ahead, forget first down. You guys just play 2nd and 9. We'll just start the series 2nd and 9 every time." Of course he would. So why are these guys continuing to do this and put themselves into 3rd and long situations? On the season, they're averaging 8.6 yards to go on 2nd down. That ranks 31st because of their first down play calling. And they average 8.3 yards to go on 3rd down. That also ranks 31st. Again, it's because of their play calling. CJ Stroud is a very good second-year quarterback. He exceeded expectations last year. He's obviously got the talent. He's obviously got the skill. He's a fine quarterback in this NFL. The Houston Texans should be doing better on early downs. They should not be forcing CJ Stroud into these 3rd and long situations at the 2nd highest rate in the NFL and have the 2nd lowest yardage gained on 1st and 2nd down. This offense is better, but yet that's what they're designed to do. That's the desired play calling strategy of Bobby Slowick. And I'm just worried that that's going to cause problems for them in the future and make it so that it's very difficult to overcome. I mean, they just got to play a little bit smarter on these early downs. Said it before, I'm saying it now. I'll probably say it again before we get to the playoffs, assuming the Houston Texans make it, which I think they will, sitting at 6-4. They're a good enough team to overcome some of these things and still win some games, and they're going to get Nico Collins back, I assume, this week. They definitely tried to play some games with the Detroit Lions with Nico Collins' availability last week, and when they decided to bring him back off of injured reserve, when they decided to activate him, all the messaging that came out about it, they were trying to pull a fast one over on the Detroit Lions. Didn't work out. They ended up losing the game. They very easily should have and could have won. They were just a little bit more efficient on early downs. All right, Matt, next topic. All right, let's talk a little bit about Christian McCaffrey very briefly, then we're going to get into our special guest here. Christian McCaffrey, obviously his first game up with Kyle Shanahan last week, and Christian McCaffrey was utilized in the passing game pretty strongly. The run game had just below average, just below his usage that was forecast, let's say that. It's forecasted to have his rushing attempts was 14.5, dropped down to 13.5. He ended up having 13 rushing attempts. Now, he performed much better when he was out of the locker room, whether it was the first quarter or the third quarter. Once he did whatever treatment he was doing and was getting up to speed, and then, okay, now I'm going to hit the ground running, performed better in the first and third quarter. Here are the numbers. In the first quarter, 5 yards per carry, plus 0.12 EPA per rush. But in the second quarter, 1 yard per carry, minus 0.69 EPA per rush. Goes to the locker room, rests his legs, comes back in the third quarter. All of a sudden, 5 yards per carry, plus 0.14 EPA per rush, almost identical to what he did in the first quarter. But then by the fourth quarter, 1 yard per carry, again, just like he did in the second quarter, 1 yard per carry and minus 0.61 EPA per rush. Kyle Shanahan utilized him just like he potentially expected to. He used him on 54 of 61 offensive snaps. I just wonder why they felt they needed to use him like that. And I'm very curious to see what the 49ers do with their sports medicine, sports science team as it relates to Christian McCaffrey and the data that they have with regard to his speed and his playing as that half grew to a conclusion, right? The end of the second half, the end of the first half, end of the second half, right? Into the second and fourth quarters. Might they want to try to sprinkle in the other guys a little bit more later on in those half situations? Christian McCaffrey definitely creates a ton of gravity, meaning the eyes of the defense and their physical, where their locations are, in order to compensate for Christian McCaffrey being on the field. It does affect the defense, right? The spacing of the field, things get more open and things do change with Christian McCaffrey out there on the field. But he certainly did look like with his gait a little bit, sometimes walking back to the huddle, that I was just surprised that they went ahead and used him at that full rate for all 4 quarters. And I'm very curious to see what their internal data shows about how he was moving about and his burst and explosion in that second and fourth quarter, especially. And will we see a change at all in a very big game against the Seattle Seahawks this upcoming week? 4:05 p.m. Eastern time kickoff, where the San Francisco 49ers host the Seahawks. They're laying 6.5 points at home with the total set at 50.5 points. All right. I want to hit on a number of different topics with our special guest. Let's go ahead and bring him in right now, Matt. All right, now I want to welcome in Ross Tucker, the host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. You guys probably are already familiar with that. You can also check out all of his interesting information over at Ross Tucker NFL on all the social media apps, including X, which is where I follow Ross, and we exchange some DMs, especially around NFL schedule time. And sometimes I come on his podcast to talk a little bit about the NFL schedule makers and what they chose to do with the schedule. But that's a long time ago, Ross. We're basically past the midway point of the NFL season, and there's a lot to talk about. So I want to dive right in here with you, Ross. The New York Giants just got back from London, did not fire Brian Daboll, but they have been a disaster. That comes on the heels of paying Daniel Jones $40 million a year. They could not afford to pay Saquon Barkley $12.5 million a year, but yet they go and pay Daniel Jones. We've also seen other veteran running backs like Derrick Henry have a lot of success for a new team in addition to Saquon Barkley. What do you think that means for the veteran running back market moving forward, seeing how some of these guys have pivoted teams later on in their career and delivered a lot of impactful success for those teams? Do you think these guys are just kind of one of ones because they're elite running backs, or do you think we might see more teams place a little bit higher stock in a veteran running back signing?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different things that are really interesting here, Warren. And I'll start with the macro before we get to the micro of the New York Giants, but the macro of the running back position, right? You know, I think with every passing year, the value or the market for those guys had continued to diminish and diminish and diminish. And so, like any other market, right? At some point, people have it wrong and there's actually value there. And credit and kudos, not surprisingly. And people always say this because I do some work for the team, like their preseason games. But to Howie Roseman, I mean, there's a reason why he's one of the, 2 or 3 best GMs in the league. I think he recognized that those guys still get the ball a lot. Those guys can still be matchup nightmares in the passing game. And that's why he paid Saquon Barkley $12.5 million a year this offseason like he did. And what's really interesting, we all know, okay, that throwing the ball is more effective, more efficient than running the ball in general. But in particular, with so many defenses now playing 2 deep safeties, because these coordinators, Warren, are obsessed with not giving up explosive plays, boy, it makes it really valuable if you have a good running game, a runner that can get extra yards that an average guy wouldn't, and quite frankly, a guy to throw the ball to on checkdowns. It's kind of crazy to me, and I wrote about this a couple weeks ago in my column for the 33rd team, but you think about Saquon at $12.5 million a year. I mean, he's making less than $10 million a year than like a Michael Pittman for the Colts, right? I mean, or less than $6 million, more than $6 million a year, less than Brandon Cooks or, Calvin Ridley or some of these guys. And boy, you just can't tell me that he's not providing more value than they are. And it's almost like what happened at the same time. I think the wide receiver market got a little bit too rich. I think those guys are probably a little bit overvalued, and the running backs a little bit undervalued. In other words, I don't know that there should be receivers making 32, 34, $35 million a year. Although those guys are true difference-making players that decide the outcome of games. I think it's actually how that's propped up the next tier, right? Like the guys that aren't top 5 receivers, it's the next tier that have been really propped up by those elite guys, and the numbers have gotten out of whack. I mean, I'd rather have a guy like Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry for $8 million a year. Derrick Henry makes a third of what Michael Pittman makes. Michael Pittman's a good player. I mean, the Colts are happy they have him, whatever. But I just think the market has really, really it got out of whack at both positions, quite frankly, at receiver and at running back. Some teams identified that and are benefiting greatly because it's not just Henry or Saquon. I mean, Warren, look at the value that Joe Mixon has given the Texans this year. Where would they be without that guy? Or James Conner for the Cardinals. I mean, Kamara, there's a reason why the Saints just gave Kamara another new deal. These guys are all late 20s, early 30s, and they're still providing a ton of value for their teams. They're foundational pieces of these teams.
And we have seen that with those 2 deep safeties more prevalent. We have seen, I'm looking right now, since 2000, so we're talking about 25 years now, there have been 4 years where we have seen running backs average 4.4 yards per carry or more. 2024, 2022, 2020, and 2018. I don't know why it's all the even number years, but at any rate, it's all the years that are the most frequently here, that because of all the 2 deep safeties, the defenses are playing a little bit more of these rushing attempts are having a little bit more success and efficiency, and more teams are leaning into them. So it's going to be interesting to see, the next time a running back who has a bigger name brand that might cost a little bit more is available this upcoming offseason, and what teams choose to do there and how many more teams are interested. We saw like Jerry Jones said he wasn't interested in Derrick Henry, didn't think Derrick Henry would provide enough value to him. And meanwhile, a smart franchise, and that's one of the things that I'll mention before we go to the next topic, Ross, is you mentioned Howie Roseman. The Baltimore Ravens pretty smart as well. So you got 2 of the smarter franchises, 2 of the smarter forward-looking GMs in the NFL, one in the NFC, one in the AFC, both going after some of the more veteran but potentially a little bit more juice left in the tank with very little risk there because those contracts are not that expensive on those guys. The Cowboys are one of these teams now that have 3 wins or less. So it's a great pivot, Ross. We have 11 teams that have won 3 or fewer games so far this season. I'll rattle them off here. The Cowboys, the Giants, the Saints, and the Panthers in the NFC. And over in the AFC, we've got the Raiders, the Titans, the Jaguars, the Browns, the Patriots, the Jets, and the Dolphins. 3 teams there in the AFC East to close it out. The crazy part about it is a lot of these teams actually have veteran quarterbacks that are getting paid money, and the teams thought that there was some potential, and that was the reason that they were paying these guys and having these guys potential for a good season. And I'll just name the Jets stand out, the Cowboys, obviously, the 2 New York teams, the Giants, throw them in there, the Saints, the Jaguars, and of course the Browns. We already know the struggles that they have had. Of those 11 teams, which one do you find to be the most disappointing that they're sitting here entering week 11 with just 3 wins?
Well, first of all, it's funny. This is great timing, Warren, because this is actually what I'm writing about this week for the 30-30. I only write every couple of weeks, but these are topics that obviously I'm intrigued by. I can't ever remember it being like this, Warren. And I'm glad I'm on with you. We're just talking about it now, but maybe by the end of the week or next couple of days, you can figure it out. I can't ever remember week 11, there being 11 teams that have 3 wins or less that kind of feel like they're out of it. Now, after what we saw on Monday night with the Dolphins, I'm not ready to write them off just quite yet, especially when you look at their upcoming schedule. They still might be able to get back in this thing with there being 7 teams in the playoffs and a lot more season to go. But it's not good, Warren. I've been on bad teams, and, there's times where the last 2 or 3 games you're kind of playing out the string. It feels like there's arguably double-digit teams in the league that more or less are just playing out the string it's November 12th. I don't think that's healthy for the game. I don't know that I have a real explanation for it, but it's not good because when there's matchups of those two teams, it's not compelling. Yes, there can be upsets. The Saints just beat the Falcons, or the game I did a couple weeks ago for CBS, the Browns beat the Ravens, and there will be other upsets, but those will still be probably few and far between. This is the smallest middle we've ever had, right? There's like 10 or 11 good teams. There's 11 bad teams. There's usually more teams in the middle than this. And again, I don't have a great explanation why. For your specific question, I think you got to go with the Jets and the Browns. You know, both those teams were really, really heavily invested in this year. Cowboys not as much, because the Cowboys made decisions this offseason. They did nothing to objectively, they did nothing to get better. I mean, there's not a single argument you could make letting Tyron Smith and Biotish go, or Tony Pollard go, replacing all those guys with essentially journeymen or rookies or whatever. The Cowboys didn't do anything to get better this offseason, so we shouldn't be surprised that they're worse. The Jets are as all in as you can be, and the Browns heavily invested in this year. The only thing I'll say about the Browns is I give them credit for recognizing pretty early, hey, we are not what we thought we were, and trading Amari Cooper and then trading Zadarius Smith. The Browns shifted into, I guess, developmental mode or rebuild mode faster than the Jets, who, even after that win over the Texans, still, I think, thought they could get back in this thing. But after that Cardinals loss, it just seems like it's going to be an ugly – and that's the thing. I've been on teams like this. I've been in cities like this. It's going to be ugly the next couple of months in a lot of NFL cities.
Yeah, it does seem, and I will look into that, Ross, and maybe I'll tweet out the answers to why we, or how many years we've seen this little few teams in the middle and so many teams at one end of the spectrum or the other. But that's unfortunate, I feel, for the product in general, because a lot of those fans are going to be checking out pretty soon, making plans for what they're going to do the rest of the regular season, potentially not attending the games quite as frequently, just with the poor records that these teams have. Speaking of which, we've got a team in the Chicago Bears who just earlier today, we see that they fired their offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, and we saw JSN's infamous interview now at the Super Bowl last season before the game, talk a little bit about what JSN was doing out in Seattle for him and what he thought JSN, what the Bears fans needed to know about JSN. And all he could really say is he's a nice guy. And Shane Waldron obviously was not part of the answer there. There are no answers yet. They're pivoting to a new offensive coordinator. But we're seeing Caleb Williams put up really bad numbers there in that Chicago offense. And in a minute, I do want to talk about why you think that is. But my first question for you is, look at this rookie draft class. We obviously have Bo Nix, we have Caleb Williams, we have Drake May, and we have Jaden Daniels. Now, obviously, Jaden Daniels sits atop of that list right now with his performance and what the Commanders are doing this season. We'll talk more about them momentarily. But where do you right now slot Caleb Williams in with that foursome of rookie quarterbacks this season?
Well, that's the part that's got to be scariest for Bears fans, right? I mean, at this point, let's be honest, it would be a huge upset if Caleb Williams ends up becoming a better player than Jaden Daniels. I mean, Jaden Daniels is already a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Caleb Williams is bottom 10. So it's pretty hard to move up that much. And I don't think you can look at Jaden Daniels and act like he's got this loaded roster around him. So that one's pretty obvious. What's probably really scary for Bears fans, if you watched that game on Sunday and you didn't know where Drake May was drafted or where Caleb Williams was drafted, and you just watched them play, Drake May, I thought, looked a lot better than Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, and Greg Cosell has talked about this multiple times on the Thursday edition of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast with me, the NFL Films legend. he has a really poor feel for the pocket. Now, he can make spectacular plays when he gets outside of the pocket. He has an incredible ability to make throws on the move, but inside the pocket, the subtle movement, right? The Dan Marino, the Tom Brady, the subtle movement. Caleb Williams does not have a good feel for that. He seems like he's a little shell-shocked. He's taking sacks you just can't take. And honestly, even just watching Bo Nix against the Chiefs, he looks better than Caleb Williams. And I know everybody's going to just blame it all on Shane Waldron, and certainly he's the fall guy right now. But, I mean, Shane Waldron was the guy getting all the praise when Geno Smith took the league by storm a couple years ago and had that awesome year for the Seahawks, which is why I didn't love what JSN said at the Super Bowl after he had, I guess, a disappointing rookie year. But I just think we'll see. And the funny thing is, though, from a Bears perspective, Warren, unless Caleb lights it up with Thomas Brown, Matt Eberflus is done. They're not going to let him hire another offensive coordinator. He had Getsy, moved on from him. Waldron moved on. I don't think Matt Eberflus, barring something very unforeseen with Thomas Brown totally turning around the offense, I just don't see how Eberflus survives and or the Bears organization allows him to hire a third offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and the other thing I like to talk a lot about schedule metrics, and the Chicago Bears offense has played the sixth easiest schedule of opposing pass defenses. So we've seen all of these struggles. It was the same way with the Cleveland Browns this year. A lot of struggles despite playing defenses that you should be able to have a little bit of success against. So, for me, part of the responsibility, I think everything is layered within the preparation and the coaching and what are you being trained to do. And this is not just the play calling. So I definitely agree with you. I don't think that you're going to bring in a new offensive coordinator and all of a sudden it's going to look great. So I believe that they're still going to struggle in this regard. And it's because all of the preparation and what they've been building into the thought process of how he should be reacting in the pocket, what they want him doing there is not just on the offensive coordinator. They are just struggling with their whole scheme in general. And I don't think that's something you can pivot away from, but it's also the coaching and everything he was trained for in minicamp, in training camp, in the preseason. And it's going to be very difficult, in my opinion, to make a quick pivot and just have a lot of success down the stretch. And I do believe that you are going to see them move on from the head coach at some point. I'm wondering if the Shane Waldron thing was just a fall guy here to buy the head coach a little bit more time. But is there anything else that you saw before we pivot on to the Thursday night preview from Caleb Williams that you think is a specific thing that they could potentially change in the future to help improve his success or chances of success the rest of the season?
Yeah, the thing I would say, Warren, is two things. One is I'm like you. I'm a huge fan of play action pass. So I'd like to see that more. That's on the positive. On the negative, his body language is concerning to me. You think about how he reacted at the end of the Commanders game with the Hail Maryland, even on the sideline. Body language matters a lot. How you carry yourself at that position matters a lot. And so that would be concerning to me. And I would also say it's concerning to me that they didn't win more when he was at USC, right? I mean, a lot of talent at USC. You're the number one overall pick. You win the Heisman Trophy. And obviously their defense was horrendous. But still, there was enough close games there where you had thought that maybe he would have come through more late in some of those games.
Well, I'll just throw this last nugget in and jumping ahead to a later section in the show where we do dive into some strength of schedule, Ross. But the Chicago Bears' upcoming schedule is by far the most difficult of any team in the NFL. The stretch that they have from this upcoming game until the end of the season is by far the most difficult. They are going to be going up against the Packers, the Vikings, then the Lions, then the 49ers, then the Vikings again, then the Lions again, then the Seahawks, and then the Green Bay Packers to close out the year. By my count, every single one of those teams currently ranks top 10 in efficiency other than the Seattle Seahawks. So it is a gauntlet, and you'll see on the graphic, the Chicago Bears to strength of schedule, which the hardest is at the top. They're number one. The number two team is way down here at number 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6. They are just night and day different. It's going to be very challenging for them the rest of the way with this new offensive coordinator. All right, let's turn the page to week 11, and we've got Thursday night football, and obviously a team near and dear to your heart because they're close by in proximity, and you cover the team nationally and do local things as well with the Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are hosting the Washington Commanders. This is going to be a great game. NFC East battle, probably for years to come. New rivalry now that Jaden Daniels absolutely seems legit. You've got Jaden Daniels going up against Jalen Hurts. I want to talk about the Eagles defense first of all, though. Let's start there. This Eagles defense, since week 5, their bye was in week 5, has been the number one most efficient defense in the NFL, both on an EPA per play perspective and a yards per play perspective. They've been great against the pass, ranking number 1. They've ranked number 4 against the run. That said, they have played the following offenses: the Cleveland Browns with Deshaun Watson, the Giants, the Cowboys with Cooper Rush, the Jaguars, who are obviously struggling a ton on that side of the ball, and the Cincinnati Bengals. What do you make of this Eagles defense right now? And how do you think they're going to go about trying to limit Jaden Daniels? Do you think that they're going to have success? Do you think that this is one of the top 3 to 5 defenses in the NFL, or they've been overperforming because of the offenses they've played, and the Commanders should have a little success here offensively?
Yeah, well, 2 things, Warren. First of all, yes, I did grow up outside of Philadelphia as an Eagles fan, so it is cool to do some work for the team and for the city, but also for people that are watching us. As you can see with the 2 helmets I'm pointing at, I do have Washington's near and dear to my heart as well, because that's where I both started and finished my career. So have an affinity for both these teams for very different reasons. The Eagles defense is legit. And I know that they haven't played the greatest of offenses, but you look at some of the numbers, and I know, Warren, nobody knows the numbers more than you. They held the Giants and the Cowboys to less than 50 net passing yards in an NFL game. These are still NFL teams. It's still an NFL game. And by the way, the Eagles had 3-score leads most of the game. So these other teams should be able to rack up a lot of garbage time yards, and they still couldn't, right? I mean, they should have 250 yards net passing because they're behind by 3 scores. It didn't happen. What's happened is that the Eagles have upgraded a lot of spots. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, you kind of knew as the other safety. And then the other one that really has jumped out, Zach Bond. I mean, he's kind of come out of nowhere to be one of the better off-the-ball linebackers in the league. And then the 2 rookies, Quinyon Mitchell at outside corner and Cooper DeJean as the nickel corner. Looks like Howie Roseman absolutely nailed both of those draft choices. They've made it a different defense. You know, in particular after the bye, since DeJean has been in there at nickel, he has made a bunch of plays. And you can say, oh, it's the Browns and the Giants, whatever. Nobody did a better job against Joe Burrow and the Bengals than the Eagles. I mean, nobody. You know, Burrow was able to get a couple scores, but the Eagles really held them in check. I think this will be their toughest test against Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. But the way they're playing right now, I'm believing that they are this good. And they're not even that dominant on the defensive line. It's not like it was 2 years ago when they're just wrecking shop on the D-line. They're good on the D-line. They're not great right now, I would say. So if those guys continue to come along, because they got a lot of young guys there, boy, they could really be something special. And they're aided by, you know, the best offensive roster in pro football. That helps quite a bit.
Yeah, it does. The 2 complementary sides of the football definitely do help in their time of possession and their running. Let's talk about that side of the ball, Ross, that offensive side of the ball for the Philadelphia Eagles here. Kellen Moore, I thought they were going to bring a lot more play action to the game. They ranked 27th in play action. They're ranked middle of the pack in pre-snap motion. Right now, this team, in terms of EPA per play, ranks just outside the top 10 offensively. So they have room to grow, but they also aren't exactly the style of offense that I thought we might be getting when we brought Kellen Moore in. It's a little bit more of Kellen Moore adapting to Jalen Hurts. What would your report card grade out the Philadelphia Eagles offense through the first half of the season, with the understanding that they did lose some of their weapons along the way offensively? Now they've got their skill players back, and then kind of talk to us a little bit about what you expect to see on Thursday night with this offense against the Commanders defense that is improving, but still from a personnel perspective does have some things to be desired, especially in that back half.
I would say B plus, A minus, kind of like every grade I ever got at Princeton. not actually an A or an A plus, but certainly good enough. I think a lot of people thought there'd be more play action and more under center and more motion. But as a coordinator, man, it's hard to do things that maybe the quarterback doesn't love or isn't as comfortable with. Now, I don't know that, but pretty clearly this offense is a hybrid of what Kellen Moore likes, what Nick Sirianni likes, and maybe most importantly, what Jalen Hurts likes. What I like about what they've done more recently is there has been more under center and there has been more play action. I would say, not having the numbers in front of me, with every passing week. In other words, I think the motion numbers and the play action numbers would have been even worse earlier in the year. I think they're getting to a little bit more of that stuff. I think it's worked. Jalen Hurts threw a beautiful deep pass to A.J. Brown on Sunday against the Cowboys off of a play action. Maybe it wasn't play action, but it was definitely under center. Beautiful deep throw down the sideline. So I think that they are getting there slowly but surely. You didn't want to just totally revamp everything, especially a lot of the things that the Eagles had done very well. So they still have the zone read game. They still have the quarterback run game. They still have the RPOs. And what really happens now is it makes them pretty tough to defend because you kind of have multiple offenses in there. You have the under center stuff, you have the play action stuff, but you also have the gun, zone read, RPO stuff. So as a defense, you have to be prepared for all of that stuff. This thing about Hurts, I will say, is I don't think he's ever going to have perhaps the pocket presence that is ideal. He certainly takes sacks that he shouldn't. However, very important, he also makes some plays that other quarterbacks wouldn't by holding on to the ball, extending it. Sometimes he can find that space to step up and he'll throw a touchdown pass to Dallas Goedert or Johnny Wilson. Sometimes he tries to step up and he takes a sack that he shouldn't. But like anything else, I think sometimes you got to take the good with the bad when it comes to Hurts or a lot of these guys.
Yeah, and I'm looking up right now their early down usage of play action. And for sure, what you're saying is correct. If you look at weeks 2, 3, 4, where they lost 2 out of those 3 games, they were hovering right around 19 to 18% in a couple of those games, 37% in the other. But that was the high water mark of the first 6 games of the season for them, was 37%. Since that point in time, over the last 4 games, their early down play action usage rate has been 45%, 46%, 50%, and 40% in those last 4 games. So it has picked up, and their offense has been looking a bit better here down the stretch. Real quick, can I get any type of quick prediction for you? Right now, the Philadelphia Eagles are favored. I know you do the betting podcast with Steve Fezzik. The Eagles are favored by 3.5 points. The total sits at 48.5, 49 points. If you had to lean right now on the side or the total or both, do you have a lean in either direction there?
Yeah, in fact, it's good timing because Tuesday mornings is when we record the Even Money betting podcast. And man, Warren, we're on fire. I was up 15 units this week. Steve was up 14 units. We've done very well with the Wong teasers, teasing through the 7 and the 3 with 2 team teasers. Other than teasers, my favorite thing, Warren, is getting 3.5, right? Because when you're getting 3.5 points, they're basically telling you, close game, especially for the road team getting to 3.5. It's kind of a toss-up game, could go either way. You're going to give me more than a field goal. You're going to give me 3 in the hook. I like the Commanders getting the 3.5. I like the Eagles to win the game. I think it's about a 27-24 game. The Eagles win. I like the fact on a short week that they have the home field advantage. They've got the more experienced quarterback. Let's be honest, they have the better roster. And that said, I think the Commanders proved again against the Steelers that they are for real. They are very capable. So I think it's a close game. I think Hurts makes a play with his legs late to win it by a field goal. But I would take the Commanders, and I did on the Even Money Betting Podcast to cover. So I'm broadcasting the game. Let's hope it's something just like that, right? Somebody kicks a game-winning field goal late, and it's an exciting game for all of us.
You call your shot, and it slips over the total there of the 49 points late. If it is 24-24, get over the total with that game-winning field goal. Ross, before I get you out of here, why don't you tell us a little bit about myfrontpagestory.com and why you think it's the best gift ever?
Oh, I appreciate you saying that, Warren. Yeah, it's a buddy of mine started the company. It's genius, actually. You talk to a writer for 10 minutes or you fill out an email. They write the most incredible story about your loved one. It could be your wife, your mom, whoever. Looks like it's on the cover of the newspaper. In fact, I'll show you right now. This is the one we did for my wife's grandma. It's amazing. She had it hanging up in her house.
Oh, wow. So they print that. They print that. You can get it printed and framed.
Yeah, it's printed and framed. Looks like it's on the cover of the newspaper. I've seen so many videos now, Warren, where the mom or the wife or whoever, when they open it and they start reading the quotes, like my sister had a quote for the one we got my mom saying, I wouldn't be the woman I am today if it weren't for my mom. My mom just started bawling. So anyway, I know everybody's going to start to do all the Black Friday deals and stuff. Check out my buddy's business, myfrontpagestory.com. It is the best gift, especially like Valentine's Day or Mother's Day, but you can do it for the holidays as well. Myfrontpagestory.com. Thanks for the little plug, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Are those helmets, you mentioned the old Redskins were the first and the last team that you played for. Are those helmets therefore organized in progression from how you started your career, or is that just how they're organized?
No, good question. It's actually because my head, so I think the coolest helmets are the 2 Washington ones and the Cowboys and the Bills. And my head usually blocks Princeton and the Patriots. You can kind of see them. But I like the other 4 better. I just think they look cooler or better. And I started a bunch of games for the Cowboys and Bills, and I kind of like the Commanders. Or Washington. I never looked at it that way. But yes, that's how I started and finished. But it's not in order. Certainly not in order with Princeton.
Not with Princeton. Yeah, not with Princeton in the middle. There you go. Well, Ross, we really appreciate the time here. Make sure that you guys are following Ross on socials. You've got the Ross Tucker Football Podcast as well. Everybody check that out. Really appreciate you giving us some time, Ross.
Hey, my pleasure, Warren. Keep up the great work. You know I'm a huge fan. I got to get you on the Ross Tucker Podcast soon to go over some of these numbers.
Thursday night preview. Obviously, again, he said he's going to be calling that game with Iron Eagle, and we're going to be previewing that game, of course. Let's talk a little bit about what we've got going on here. We have previewed that Thursday night game, the Commanders and the Eagles, up on the website. Matt, why don't you pull that up? And we've got a look at this game, detailing the entire prediction of what we think is going to happen in this game, going through every single player. Go ahead and scroll down there, Matt. And this is one example, guys, of what you can get from the website this week for free. This is entirely unlocked. Keep rolling through there, Matt. Actually, I don't think this is the right one, Matt. Go all the way to the bottom. Go all the way to the bottom. And click that link right there. It says Commanders at Eagles, right in the middle of your page. Okay, this is the worksheet. So that's the landing page for all the worksheets. You can see they're going to be going up there soon. This is the Week 11 worksheet. Go ahead and scroll all the way down here. We've got the game predictions, the game previews, some key stats that you need to know about all of the teams. We break down each of the quarterbacks, sharing the high points, the low points, how they perform against defenses that they're likely to get. We talk about what to expect from them. We talk about the running backs. We go through position by position. We talk about what we're going to get out of the running backs in the game. We also continue going through the wide receivers and then the tight ends. You can see there's a ton of information here. This is all free this week. This is 100% free this week. And you go over to the website, as you guys are talking about in the chat. You punch in your information so that you can get into the system. We need your email address. We need your phone number so that you can get the texting information. You need to get on board with the package. It doesn't cost anything. And you're in the system. Once you're in the system the right way, then we can get you the text every time we release plays, every time we release props, every time we release any of our final synopsis on the game previews and the game predictions. So you'll get free text for that. You'll get free emails for that. And it's finally here. We do this once a year. So it's Sharp Football Free Week over at Sharp Football Analysis. Take advantage of it. Most weeks we're talking about the record. The record is great. Not $100 better is up $9,794. And we're giving you coupon codes and discount codes to get involved, whether it's a weekly package or it's the rest of the season package. We're doing none of that this week. You obviously notice, and we're not going to do any of that on the Friday show. That's because this is free week. You don't need to buy anything at the website. Get on board. It's 100% free. We've got game previews already set up for the Eagles Commanders on Thursday, and we're going to soon get into previewing every single other game. And we get these previews out in that level of detail that you just saw super early. We will have more posted later on today, and by tomorrow is Wednesday morning, all of them will be up there. So you'll have all day Wednesday, all day Thursday, all day Friday, all day Saturday to read and review the detailed game preview and analysis. And we do that every single week. We're not going to change what we do just for this free week. Everything's going to be exactly the same. So no, J-Bo, this is not college. You get NFL only. You get NFL props. So you get all of our fantasy information. You get all of our prop information. You get all of our betting information. This is NFL, though, free week. Not college, just NFL. Okay. We will move over to, okay, so for the questions in the chat, you can cancel whenever you want to. It is a free week of access. The details are at the bottom. You can cancel whenever you want to. As soon as you hit cancel, though, you lose access. So you don't want to hit cancel. The information is on the page. If you want to read more information about it, it's on the page. Go to sharp.football. That gets you on board. Go to sharp.football, has all the information you need to know in the link right there about how you can get access, how long you have access for the free week. So I highly encourage you to check it out. If you've never used this service before, if you used it in the past, want to use it again for free week, I highly encourage you to get on board for free. You get everything that we do for the NFL this week 100% free. Okay, let's go on to the next topic, Matt. So I have no idea what is going on here with this Daniel Jones situation, but we seem to reach the boiling point for either ownership or coaching where it is now being speculated that we will never see Daniel Jones suit up for the New York Giants and step onto the field again. And that happened after that ridiculous performance over in Germany, which obviously cost the New York Giants the game. Yes, we had the unfortunate fumble by Tyrone Tracy, but Daniel Jones is the one who blew opportunity after opportunity to score enough points to lead the New York Giants to a win. And if you haven't heard the interview, I got it pulled up here. Matt, why don't you play that interview? I will cite where this is from in a minute. Go ahead and pull that interview up and play that.
I would guess that we don't see Daniel Jones play another down for the Giants. That would be my guess right now. Because Brian Daboll's tone yesterday was different than it was in other weeks. It was always Daniel Jones is our starter, Daniel Jones is our starter, Daniel Jones is our starter. And then yesterday, we're evaluating everything. And we're evaluating everything in our bye week. And we have the worst record in football. And Daniel Jones has a $23 million injury guarantee. And just as we saw Russell Wilson and Jimmy Garoppolo be benched last year and Derek Carr the year before to not risk those players getting hurt, I think we're looking at the same thing with Daniel Jones right now. I think that when they get back from the bye, they'll turn to Drew Lock as their restarting quarterback. Daniel Jones will be put on ice as insurance. And my guess today would be that the Daniel Jones experience time in New York is over.
Strong words from Adam Schefter, but that is his prediction. And I hate to say I told you so, but I've been talking about this for a couple of years. And when I first came out with this analysis, it was a few weeks after the 2022 season ended for the New York Giants. And it ended with a loss, but it was a playoff loss in the divisional round after they won in the wild card round. And this was the first time that they won a playoff game since 2011 when they won the Super Bowl with Eli Manning. That was a big deal for New York. It was Brian Daboll's first season there. And I warned everybody at that time, and it was very unpopular opinion at that time because of what Daniel Jones had just done and what the team had just done with producing a winning record. Keep in mind, I mean, this team had gone through multiple coaches since their last playoff win, from Ben McAdoo to Pat Shurmur to Joe Judge, and then it was Brian Daboll. They had not won more than 5 or 6 games in any one of those years, with multiple years where they won 3 or 4 games. And finally they go and they win 9 games. And finally they go to the playoffs. And finally they win a playoff game. And Brian Daboll gets coach of the year and Daniel Jones gets a new contract. And I was trying to tell everybody that Daniel Jones does not deserve a new contract. And it was for 2 reasons. Number one, the reason that the offense was performing well was not because of Daniel Jones. And reason number 2, Daniel Jones didn't even have a good season in 2022. But unfortunately, we have the New York Giants front office not looking at the analytics enough and not looking behind the scenes at, you are not what your record says you are. And just because your team goes to the playoffs does not mean it was led there by a good quarterback, by a quarterback who is deserving of a $160 million contract. Now, I know the Giants can get out of that, thankfully, and they will. And so you could say, well, it's not the worst contract in the world, but it was still a hilarious contract at the time. And it did signify a buy-in to Daniel Jones for the immediate future because you feel like he earned it. And at no point in time did Daniel Jones actually earn that. I'm going to go through the stats. I wrote up an article days after that 2022 season, okay? Daniel Jones in 2022, when they won 9 games, went to the divisional round after winning in the wild card round. He threw 15 touchdown passes in 16 games. That's the same number that Marcus Mariota threw, and Marcus Mariota played only 13 games. He averaged 6.8 yards per attempt, which was 30th in the NFL. The reason that the team went to the playoffs was because they improved their points per game from 15.2 to 21.5 from 2021 to 2022, which ranked around a league average. But that was not because of Daniel Jones. On first downs, he averaged minus 0.06 EPA per attempt, which is 38th in the NFL. His 45% success rate on first down passes was a career low. Why is first down passing important? Because that's when it's the easiest to throw the football. That's when the defense might be playing the run. If you're not efficient when you're passing the ball on first down, when the defense is playing the run and not blitzing you, chances are you're not going to be very efficient throughout the rest of the downs, at least not year over year. Daniel Jones had career lows in EPA per attempt and success rate. He ranked 42 out of 47 quarterbacks on yards per attempt. His completion rate was 56%, which ranked 39th. He ranked 33rd in first down conversion rate. What Daniel Jones was doing well was scrambling with the football to convert first downs. He gained 7.9 yards per carry on scrambles, As I mentioned before, his pass attempts averaged 6.8. 7.9 yards per carry when he ran the ball over 50 times, 6.8 yards per attempt when he passed the ball. He's a much better runner than a thrower of the football, but nobody was talking about that. They were just crediting Daniel Jones for leading the team to the playoffs. They scored touchdowns at the 7th best rate in 2022 inside the red zone after doing a career low rate, 45% in 2021. They went from number 32 to number 7. That's because their running backs averaged the number 2 most efficient success down inside of the red zone in 2022 after ranking 30th in 2021. So the running backs go from 30th to number 2, and their red zone scoring goes from 32 to number 7. That is what is correlated, not Daniel Jones. They were taking the ball out of Daniel Jones' hands down inside of the red zone. Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka were getting better rushing efficiency out of their ground game down inside of the red zone. They were leaning into the running back run game down inside of the red zone. Daniel Jones simply completed passes down inside of the red zone. He improved his completion rate from 39% pass rate, 39% completion rate in the red zone in 2021 to 60 in 2022. But he averaged just 3.9 air yards per attempt on those passes, which was 31st. This was all a product of coaching. The whole Daniel Jones experiment and what they got successfully out of Daniel Jones in 2022 that allowed them to make the playoffs and allowed Daniel Jones to get this contract was 100% coaching. Take the ball out of his hands, run the football more inside of the red zone, get him to scramble with the football more when he is dropped back over the other 80 yards of the football field. And then down inside the red zone, just complete short passes that won't be made incompletions, won't allow you to get sacked, and will increase our yardage because we're only going to throw 3.9 yards per attempt. So you're not going to have high upside, but you're going to avoid the low downside. The problem is that's a one-year thing. Defenses then figure out how you're handicapped offensively with this quarterback, and they can make adjustments. And we saw the Giants against an easy schedule pull out a lot of close wins late in the games to win those 9 games and to make it to the playoffs. And so we saw them fall back to earth precipitously in 2023 at 6-11, and now they absolutely stink and are 2-8. And people are saying that what's hilarious to me as we enter this stage, and by the way, my producer said that Adam Schefter appeared on Unsportsmanlike with Evan, Canty, and Michelle on ESPN Radio. So credit for the audio there earlier of Schefter saying Daniel Jones is done in New York to that program. It's funny to me that people are saying that it might be time for Brian Daboll to leave, when the only reason that Daniel Jones got his contract in the first place was because of Brian Daboll's brilliance at coaching in that 2022 season to make all the adjustments that he had to make from prior regimes in order to get some success out of this offense. But as we have certainly seen, you can't continue making ridiculous coaching move out of ridiculous coaching move that's going to increase your upside when you've got a quarterback who plays like Daniel Jones does, when you've got a roster that's built like the New York Giants is. And so I don't think the roster is great, but I don't think that Brian Daboll is the one to blame. And I will say this, if Brian Daboll ends up getting fired from New York, which is entirely possible at some point in the season or after this season, another franchise is going to be very fortunate to get Brian Daboll. That Buffalo Bills team is winning games right now, but the offense, despite having a more diverse set of weapons than when Brian Daboll was there. When Brian Daboll was there, keep in mind, Dalton Kincaid really wasn't a thing. They didn't really have all these other great number 2 wide receiver, number 3 wide receiver that they've now added. They've been injured and banged up, of course, right now. But when Brian Daboll was there, it was Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. And that was one of the best offenses in the NFL. And they obviously have dropped off tremendously since Daboll left. He comes into New York, overhauls what's going on with the New York Giants his first year there, gets his team to do something they haven't done since 2011, which is win a playoff game, produce a winning record. And now all of a sudden, hey, it could be Brian Daboll's fault. Brian Daboll, to me, is nowhere near. If you look at the list of these different coaches that are in New York, I listed them off. Ben McAdoo, Pat Shurmur, and Joe Judge. He's not in the category of any of those guys in terms of what he could bring to a team in helping them win games offensively. But we shall see what ends up happening with them. All right, we have not gotten to the chat, so I want to make sure that if you guys have some comments in the chat before we get to our final topics here, go ahead and go to YouTube, search Sharp Football Analysis, and you can get all your questions, comments into the chat if you want. Dayball is top tier. Exile, I agree. It's the unfortunate part is like what Dayball and there's a couple of other play callers. I've said this on the show previously. You can only work with what you've got, and he's got a quarterback in Daniel Jones. I've also talked about this with some of our prior guests. I know for a fact what went into the decision to bring on Daniel Jones. And in certain regimes, certain people have different levels of power. In some regimes, whatever the head coach says is pretty much what's going to go, and the GM will acquiesce. In other regimes, the GM is going to hold a little bit more power, and his final decision will be the one that carries things. I think there are certain coaches that might say, I'm okay either way. However you negotiate it, I'll try to make it work. Nobody's going to say, hey, let's completely rebuild. But I know that one of these parties was not trumping and pounding the table for pay Daniel Jones whatever we need to bring him back here because he's the key to winning games. That was not Brian Daboll who was doing that. So this is what he's got to work with. Other coaches have different quarterbacks to work with. It's unfortunate. I would love to see them work with another young quarterback. And that's the funny part about it. What would be the next move here if you get rid of your quarterback? You know that you have no quarterback now. You have to go get a new quarterback. What is the most logical move to make when you go and get a new quarterback? It's to get a coach with a good offensive background that can help the new quarterback win games. It's not to go out there and do the let's hire a really good defensive coach and then find a good quarterback coach who could potentially be a nice offensive coordinator. And then if he does have success, he'll be gone in another year. No, it's to go after and pair your new quarterback to a good head coach who calls offensive plays. And so what do you have in New York right now? You got Brian Daboll, who's a great offensive play caller and play designer and play sequencer. You've already got that guy there. So, I mean, Mara can do what he wants to do with this team and his coaching decision. But if you're going out to get a new quarterback, you're going to need to go out and get a new coach if you don't have Daboll there. And you're going to probably the best best coach that you could get is somebody just like Brian Daboll. So maybe he goes after another guy like Ben Johnson or something like that. Would be another possibility, but you've got to go after and get a offensive minded coach to work with a young quarterback. So that could be the next move. I like Mike Vrabel. He is working. Where is he? In Cleveland right now. Vrabel is in Cleveland. I think he's going to get another opportunity. He's a good defensive-minded coach. I like Mike Vrabel a lot as a coach. Okay, let's go on to strength of schedule, Matt. All right, by the way, we've had less video clips in the show from play-by-play and that sort of thing. That's not by design. I don't know if you guys are in the East Coast, live on the East Coast. I don't know. Maybe you guys can update me on even what happened. But I'm working as I normally do. I'm pretty much a night owl. I work. I'm not going to bed until before 3 a.m. 3 a.m. is pretty much my time I normally go to bed here on the East Coast. And so I crank, especially on this show. I'm cranking, pulling the film clips that I want to use pretty much after Monday Night Football until around 3 a.m. Go to bed, get up early, finish off the show from an outline perspective. Verizon Fios goes down at 12:30 here on the East Coast. I'm screwing around with my router, trying to figure out what's going on here. Go online. I realized that, like on Twitter, on my phone, I'm getting online here with my the network, not the Wi-Fi, and it's down for this whole region. And I think Virginia, Maryland, DC. I'm not sure if it went up into Pennsylvania. I don't know the full extent of this outage. At any rate, personal problems I know, but Wi-Fi was like out for Verizon, a massive outage last night for hours and hours. I don't know if anybody knows what happened there, but thankfully when I woke up, it was there, but did not have any time to pull any of the clips that I would have otherwise used to illustrate any of the points a little bit more clearly. Matt, producer Matt, is saying that it affected people from Richmond to Philadelphia. So Richmond is in Virginia, state capital of Virginia, about midway level of the state, all the way up to Philadelphia. So most of you guys, it didn't impact at all, but it was very, very strange here to have such an outage like that. Okay, strength of schedule. Let's throw up the first graphic, Matt. I'm going to walk through a few of these. And Chicago Bears fans basically look away. Turn away if you root for the Chicago Bears, if you want to see the team play a little bit better now that they have a new play caller and they got rid of their prior play caller, because this is not going to be pretty down the stretch. I was hinting at this with Ross Tucker, but where the Chicago Bears go from here is not pretty. Based upon total offensive efficiency from week 11 to the end of the season, this is who the Chicago Bears are going to play. Green Bay twice, the Minnesota Vikings twice, the Detroit Lions twice. They also play in San Francisco and home against the Seattle Seahawks. Of those teams, the only one that ranks outside of the top 9 in total offensive efficiency is the Seattle Seahawks. We're talking about all 6 games against the NFC North, which they have not played a single game against the NFC North. They're just like the Pittsburgh Steelers in that regard, haven't played any team inside their division. They still have to play all of those games, their home and away games against the NFC North. And all of those teams currently, based on total efficiency, offensive, defense, and special teams, rank top 9. And then they still have to play the 49ers a few more weeks after Christian McCaffrey gets lubed up and ready to go. That's week 14. And then week 17 is the Seattle Seahawks. So that is why not only do the Chicago Bears sit there as the number 1 most difficult schedule from now until the end of the season, they're not even close to where the Carolina Panthers are. They're not even close to where the number 3 team, the New England Patriots, are. They are so much more difficult than even the top couple of next most difficult teams in terms of the Carolina Panthers, number 2, and the New England Patriots, number 3. It's laughable. So the rest of the season is an absolute disaster for the Chicago Bears. And if you can guess, the Chicago Bears probably did play an easier schedule over the first 11 weeks. And yes, they did. They played, 4 games against teams that ranked 21st or worse in efficiency, weeks 1 through 10. And now they've got 0 teams that rank 21st or worse in efficiency from the rest of the season onward. So that's going to be brutal. The other thing that I want you to notice here is the Miami Dolphins, second to the right. They play, moving forward, the second easiest schedule of the of the NFL from now until the end of the season. I think the next graphic, Matt, dives in a little bit deeper. Yep, there we go. Now, I may go back to the first graphic in a second, Matt, but this is what the Miami Dolphins are going to face from now to the end of the season based upon total efficiency. So I don't have the score in there for the Rams game. It's because I had no internet last night after the game to update all the latest scores for Week 10. But I will tell you that they obviously won that game against the Rams. Now they get to play the Raiders and then the Patriots. They also get to play the Cleveland Browns in Week 17, who may by that point in time have packed it up and tucked their tails. You also have the 2 games against the New York Jets, one of which is going to be in Week 18. By that point, the New York Jets may have packed it in and tucked their tails. See, it's really hard when you talk about a team like the New York Jets. I don't know what's going to happen with Kevin Stefanski. Obviously, I don't believe that he should be fired. He's another coach like Brian Daboll, who has been run through the ringer based upon who he's had at quarterback there. And I don't think that so many of these things are his fault. But if you got a team like the New York Jets, I'll just talk about them for a second, Matt. You can bring it back to me, and then we'll get back to the first graphic there. You look at the New York Jets. My opinion about the Jets is concerning. I thought the Jets would fare a lot better in Arizona than they did. But one thing is perfectly clear with this Jets team. Say what you want about Robert Saleh, but the New York Jets, with worse quarterback play, with a worse offensive roster, played harder and showed more effort on the defensive side of the football during Robert Saleh's tenure than they have once they fired Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh was getting these defenders to play tough when they were being led by Zach Wilson, when they were being led by Allen, and all these other quarterbacks that came through the mix there, Simeon or whoever was there. They were playing with more effort on that side of the football, which mattered. Now you don't see that effort because who's in charge? Like, it's like your parents went away to a vacation, like a second honeymoon, where they went to go watch a game for their favorite team out in Las Vegas, a football game, and they dropped you off with your grandparents. And you could get away with more things with your grandparents, and that your grandparents aren't paying as close attention to like all the minor details. It really feels like that's what this Jets defense situation is right now. Robert Saleh is now gone, and the grandparents are looking over the kids, and their kids are not really being held to as high of a standard as they would have been if their parents were in charge still with them. And so I don't know what's going on here with this Jets defense, but down the stretch, this could be their Achilles heel. We've been accustomed to the Jets playing to a certain level of effort and skill and talent because they've got guys on that side of the football that should be able to play to a certain level. And I know it hasn't been good even early in the season with Robert Saleh, but it's getting worse. And I just don't know how this thing's going to tail off on that side of the ball, especially when you got the offensive side of the ball, which was supposed to be the savior, right? If your quarterback was Zach Wilson, you would enter every single game. We've got to win this game 9-6. We could give up maybe 2 field goals defensively. Maybe we'll score a touchdown on defense or set up a short field for a field goal attempt. We're not going to get a lot of points out of our offense. We've got to hold this team down. But once you bring in Aaron Rodgers and you bring in Devontae Adams, you are expecting as a defensive player that we should get some support finally from the offense. Our offense should be going out there and scoring some points. We don't have to play as perfect and pay as many close attention to detail. We should be able to have some support for the offense, but the offense isn't giving them the support. And the defense isn't playing to the same effort level. And so I don't know what we're going to get in those games at the end of the season there for the Miami Dolphins. But the bottom line is they got to stay healthy. I don't know what's going on with Tyreek Hill. They got to get better play overall from Tua. Tua's still making some mistakes. He's got to get a little bit better as well. But they could get back on track here. Nick says Rodgers is afraid to get hit and misses chances downfield. I completely agree with the sentiment on Rodgers being afraid to get hit. He's getting rid of the ball too quick. And Rodgers, I got to look up the data on when Rodgers gets forced out of the pocket. He is so, it doesn't look right when he's trying to, it doesn't look like Aaron Rodgers of a couple of years ago, out of the pocket trying to throw the ball down the field. It seems like he's just slow and more so than looking to complete a pass down the field, he's looking for a good throwaway opportunity. They just don't have the same threat when he is on the move as he once did, and he doesn't like being on the move at all. So if you're any type of defense that could force him off of his spot, you're probably going to have a fair amount of success against Aaron Rodgers. All right, Matt, let's go back to that first graphic real quick. Okay, so you look here, some of the teams that are struggling right now are going to play difficult schedules down the stretch. The Cleveland Browns, the Carolina Panthers, the New England Patriots, the New York Giants. We're going to have a very interesting battle down the stretch here for that number 1 overall draft pick because these teams all have bad records and they all are going to be playing difficult schedules moving forward. So this battle for the number 1 overall pick this year is going to be competitive and highly interesting. What is also interesting, of course, is over the right end of the graphic where you see the teams that have the easier schedules. We already talked about the Dolphins. Take a look at the Kansas City Chiefs. You got the AFC South, which is pretty wide open between the Indianapolis Colts, the Houston Texans, Jacksonville, no, not so much, but you've got those two teams that both have easy schedules to close out the season. I don't know what, I mean, if the Kansas City Chiefs are winning these games like they are right now, pulling out a lot of voodoo, and now they got the third easiest schedule to close out the season, and they're already sitting here at 9-0. This game against the Buffalo Bills could be one of those games which really determines whether or not this team has the threat of going undefeated this year. I mean, if they're able to get over this game against the Buffalo Bills, I'm pulling up their rest of the season schedule right now based upon total efficiency of opponents faced. They do have a bye week, and then they take on the San Francisco 49ers. And I'm sorry, that's the Buffalo Bills. Let me pull up the Kansas City Chiefs schedule here. Hold on. Okay. We've got it here. The Buffalo Bills is by far the next most difficult opponent that they have to face, but they do have a game against the LA Chargers still left to go, a game against the Houston Texans left to go. Both of those are at home. And then they've got the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh on Christmas, and they got the Denver Broncos, which almost should have potentially upset them. They have to go to Denver and play them. So none of those teams rank inside the top 9 in terms of total efficiency, but none of those games are easy games. Not like what you're going to be going up against here, Carolina or the Raiders or the Cleveland Browns. Those are some really, really bad teams, which is what is making their schedule seem so easy because they do play some really, you got the haves and have-nots. These are some have-not teams, but there are some very middling teams that could give them competitive games down the stretch. Okay, let's go to the third graphic, Matt. Skip the Dolphins one or just tab through it real quick. Let's go to the third graphic. There you go. All right, now we're looking at the past total efficiency of opponents and future total efficiency of opponents. And again, this is where I want to draw your attention if you're a Chicago Bears fan. This is where you look away. And we talked about this with Ross briefly, but I'll just re-mention the fact that the saddest part about what the Chicago Bears are doing this year is that they have played the fourth easiest schedule of opponents on the season. It has not been a difficult schedule to face, and yet they have a horrible record. They are not winning games. They're sitting at 4-5. They should have won multiple of their games and put themselves in a better position because down the stretch, this is when they're playing the games that are hard to win. This is the time where you see where they rank. And of course, I'll just reiterate this for the people that weren't listening to last week's show. Do these going live every single Tuesday. The graphs are sorted by the top graph based upon the past statistic. In this case, it's total efficiency. The hardest team in the past year to date, all the way to the easiest team on the right, hardest on the left. The bottom graphic, which is future, will have the teams aligned in the same order that they were in the top graphic, but this allows you to see who moves higher or lower on the graphic to show you which teams have the biggest increase in schedule difficulty or reduction in schedule difficulty. And the Chicago Bears stand alone, obviously off to the right, having played one of the easier schedules year to date. That's why they're on the right. And they're at the top of the bottom graphic because they play now the most difficult by far schedule of opponents the rest of the way. So not easy at all for the Chicago Bears. Should have done a better job winning games earlier in the season when they could and when they were playing the fourth easiest schedule. Not going to be easy moving forward. If you look at some of these other teams off to the right there, you're looking at a team like the Dolphins, haven't played the most difficult schedule year to date, will play one of the easiest moving forward. Tampa Bay Buccaneers has the biggest jump there where they've played the most difficult schedule of opponents year to date. Now they're going to play the easiest schedule of opponents the rest of the way. That bodes really well for them. The unfortunate part is they've got so many injuries there, the skill players offensively. All right, Matt, next graphic. Now we're looking at just the defensive side of the ball. This is for your offenses. This is for your fantasy offenses for this upcoming week or your betting offenses this upcoming week. Which teams are likely to face easier time? That's what this image is going to show. So the top graphic shows year-to-date difficulty for your offense. What defenses have you played? If you're over on the left, like the Indianapolis Colts are, you've played the most difficult schedule of defenses year to date. And if you're over on the right, like the Atlanta Falcons, you've played the easiest schedule of defenses year to date. And so what you want to go, of course, and look at is then week 11, which is at the bottom, which teams stray furthest from their prior year metrics so that you could see opportunities this upcoming week. And one that certainly stands out is the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals and the Atlanta Falcons are going to play much more difficult defenses this week than they have played so far in the season. Atlanta is taking on the Denver Broncos in Denver. Right now, that line is 2 points in favor of the Denver Broncos at most spots. And you've got the Cincinnati Bengals this week. Cincinnati is taking on the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Cincinnati Bengals are catching 1.5 to 2 points. That's the current number on this game. So the LA Chargers, I don't think their defense is as good as what their metrics show, but the Cincinnati Bengals have played a really weak schedule of opposing defenses year to date, the fifth easiest schedule of opposing defenses. So it is going to be a big step up, but it may not be quite as big because the Chargers defense isn't quite as good as their current rankings show, in my opinion. You look at teams that should have easier time with their offense against these defenses. The Chargers certainly stand out there. The Patriots stand out there. Texans to some degree. The LA Rams to some degree as well. So those are some teams that have played more difficult schedules of opposing defenses and now go up against substantially easier defenses this week. All right, next graphic, Matt. This one is the same concept except for the other side of the ball. So which defenses should look a little bit worse this week? Well, a defense like the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's going to be difficult for them. So far this season, the Jaguars defense has played the second easiest schedule of opposing offenses. That's why they're over there on the right at the top. Second easiest schedule of opposing offenses. And now they're going to be going up against the Detroit Lions offense, which, I mean, obviously playing at home this week, are we really expecting Jared Goff to throw 5 more interceptions? Probably not. And that team's probably going to get back on track a little bit. And they're obviously laying 13 points, 12.5 at a couple spots, but 13 points against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are now in for a shock to their system. We also have a defense like the Pittsburgh Steelers, which has played one of the easier schedules of offenses year to date, and now they've got to take on the Baltimore Ravens. So the Baltimore Ravens are going to be a big step up for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's the one difference. In the Jaguars game, you don't have the familiarity. You got an AFC team going up against an NFC team. These teams do not play each other very frequently. In the Pittsburgh Steelers case, they're going up against Lamar Jackson, who they've played year in and year out. Although what's interesting, Matt, you can go back to me now. I think we're done with these. The interesting thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Baltimore Ravens is that I looked back at their last 8 games that they've played. Only 3 of those games did Lamar Jackson actually play in. So over the prior 8 meetings, Lamar played in only 3. But Mike Tomlin plays these mobile quarterbacks in a certain way. He ups his rate of cover 1 man, and he blitzes a ton out of cover 1 man. And I went back and I've talked to you guys a lot about the improvement of Lamar Jackson this season against blitzes. He has done much better against blitzes this season than at any other season in his career. They've really seemed to figure it out. But being completely transparent, the one style of defense from a blitzing perspective that still has given him a fair amount of trouble is cover 1 man. When defenses blitz out of cover 1 man, that's still, go and look at the data. Lamar is averaging negative EPA per pass attempt against cover 1 man blitzes. And so this game is going to be fascinating to me because the Pittsburgh Steelers have dominated this series, and the Pittsburgh Steelers know exactly how to play quarterbacks like Lamar and Lamar Jackson personally. They know how to play him. The Baltimore Ravens have pivoted their offense. It looks very different than what it's looked in prior meetings with the Pittsburgh Steelers, where the Steelers have owned. All those games were low scoring, and Pittsburgh won them no matter who their quarterbacks were. We're talking like Kenny Pickett. every quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger has, and they've been terrible for the most part, those quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph, etc., they're still beating the Baltimore Ravens because Mike Tomlin knows how to limit the Baltimore Ravens offense. And he knows how to play against Lamar Jackson. Again, he's only played him 3 times out of 8 games over the last 4 years. But he's played really well against Lamar Jackson. So I can't wait to see this cat and mouse game between Mike Tomlin and Lamar Jackson. But I will tell you this. You can now, based upon this show, expect a ton of cover one man from the Pittsburgh Steelers at higher rates than they've played in the past. They played a lot of cover one man last week against Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels was bottled up from a scrambling perspective. Jaden Daniels did not have a good day for a passing perspective. So I know Highsmith is going to be out, but if they can do a similar thing against Lamar and reduce that rushing attack from Lamar, bother his passing. And again, in years past, Lamar hasn't been as good against the blitz, but this cover one man blitzes have still given him trouble this year. If you look at a team like the Cleveland Browns, that's the only team that I think blitzed him with cover one man more than like 7 or 8 dropbacks. I think they were at like 12 or 13 dropbacks and used cover one man blitzes. And they gave him a lot of problems when they did that. And so there's no doubt Mike Tomlin is going to be looking at that film. This is what he does. And the Ravens offense should expect it. Does not necessarily mean that they're going to have success against it just because they're expecting it. They got to figure out some answers for Lamar against that blitz. That's why I cannot wait to watch this game. Todd Monken has had issues versus Pittsburgh, especially late game situations, says Exile. So, yeah, I just can't wait to see what we've got here. We've seen a little bit of early over money come into the market, pushing this up through the 48 now, up to 48.5. But there are going to be some advantage for the Pittsburgh Steelers when they choose to pass the ball, but that's the other interesting aspect of this game. The Pittsburgh Steelers want to run the football. They have one of the highest run rates in the NFL, and that's the strength of the Baltimore Ravens defense. So this game to me is a great preview. Even though I wasn't planning on going here, we'll probably dig into this game deeper on Friday's show, but just an early week preview for you guys on the Steelers-Ravens game. The Pittsburgh Steelers on offense, it's going to come down to, do they decide to run the ball like they've been weeks 1 through 10? Because if they try to run the ball at one of the highest rates in the league, which is what they have weeks 1 to 10, probably going to have some trouble offensively, going to find themselves in a lot of 3rd and long situations, and it's going to be on Russ and the Moonballs to bail them out of it, which was to some degree what happened in the game against the Washington Commanders. But that's going to happen to an even higher degree because the Baltimore Ravens run defense is much better than the Washington Commanders run defense. So that's what's going to happen on that side of the ball. And then on the other side of the ball, it's just going to come down to whether or not Lamar Jackson and Todd Monken have answers for the cover one man blitzes that the Pittsburgh Steelers are surely to send at them. This game could go multiple different directions, but I think it's going to be very fun to continue to analyze this the rest of the week. Nick, I agree with you. Those Moonballs are not going to be able to have the same level of consistent hitting. Although I will say this, George Pickens is like the perfect companion to the Russ Moonball, because those Russ Moonballs, sometimes they're pinpoint accurate, but other times you're going to have to get those in-air adjustments or those adjustments on the fly from that receiver. And Pickens is an alien. I mean, legitimately, the dude is an alien. The way that he can contort his body and just, he rarely seems, I'm going to say this, of course he's going to drop one, but he rarely seems to drop balls when he is contorting his body. His catch rate on some of the most inconceivable throws seems to be the best in the NFL. So he's so much fun to watch. And that's why I was very critical of him and the way that he was being used and some of his effort and that type of thing earlier this year against the Dallas Cowboys, where I did a long segment on this, because he's so much of a better player than that. And I'm glad we're seeing that now from him. Okay, any other quick questions for you guys before I get out of here? I want to remind everybody that it is Sharp Football Free Week. It is the 1 week of the year that we celebrate you guys who have helped grow this business and this business model for years and years and supported us. We always do this 1 week out of the year. We go opposite Jerry Jones. Sorry, we go the way Jerry Jones goes, and we pull back the curtain, we open it up, and we let you guys get everything for week 11 for free. So if you're interested in seeing all of our game previews, game predictions, write-ups, analysis, bets on sides, bets on totals, bets on player props, bets on game props, head over to sharp.football and you can get on board for week 11 100% for free, and you'll get everything texted to you as well. So emailed and texted, and it'll appear on your dashboard. A real good look at what we do on a daily basis behind the scenes. I would love nothing more to be on X and tweeting a lot more, but so many things occupy my time behind the scenes. I'm going to try to get a little bit more of the content out there this week, so you might see me a little bit more in the X streets this week than I normally am. But most weeks it's in the lab working on analysis for mostly betting, a few coaches, but for the most part, it is not really public facing. And then we do these shows and that's it. So now I want you to see what we're doing behind the scenes. It's a lot of fun over at sharp.football. Go check it out. Eric asks, do we see a significant improvement in Pickens' uses from Fields to Russell? Yes, we have seen better improvement in his usage. And I mean, there's been certain player props that have been very successful. Pickens' longest reception has definitely been one that has been a pretty consistent winner. But you're going to need those splash plays here again, obviously against the Baltimore Ravens. And something that a lot of teams try to do against the Ravens is control that time of possession, control that clock, keep your offense out on the field. And, you know, if the Steelers get into negative game script, Eric, they're going to need to utilize him a lot more, obviously. And they will, against this defense, have some success when they do that. Not as consistent as Nick said earlier. It's not going to be the same level of consistency, but I think a higher volume of targets certainly should be in the realm of possibilities there. Okay, one or two more questions. Jesus asked if I ever thought of being an offensive coordinator. Well, I like what I'm doing right now. I have had opportunities to work full-time for a team, but I prefer working for teams as a consultant. And so that's kind of what I will probably continue to do in the future, whether it's directly with the team, whether it's with the coaching staff in a more overt manner, or with a play caller in a more passive behind the scenes manner. That's really what I enjoy doing the most is contributing things as opposed to working full time. I do not have the requisite resume or come anywhere close to that to being an actual offensive coordinator, but certainly strategizing and helping with game planning and play calling and decision making for strategies. I've done that for some of the very good teams in the NFL and had a lot of success when I've worked with some of those teams. So that is fun, and that's what I would continue to do moving forward. Anybody else? I'm scrolling through a couple of other questions here. Let's see. I think we're good. Yes, Exile. It does look like there was a complete error on the Bears location. You are right in terms of that graphic as to where they were sitting, so far removed from every other team in terms of difficulty moving forward. It's ridiculous. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the show. Reminder, we do this every single Tuesday and Friday. Go live on YouTube, live on X for about an hour and a half. It's about the average time that we do this for. And share great bets, share great information, share great analysis, try to bring on guests that have some good information to share with you guys. So please go over to YouTube, help grow the show, help grow the channel. Subscribe to the Sharp Football Analysis YouTube channel. Please give this show a thumbs up. Please go ahead and click the bell to get alerts anytime that we do go live for our shows. And we will see you on Friday at noon Eastern, where we will be breaking down and sharing bets for week 11 in the NFL sides, totals, player props. We had a good week last week. I guess, Matt, you probably don't have the video. You can let me know in the chat if you have the video ready to queue up here. But Ryan went 2-1. I went 2-0. We had some great wins from Rich as well, Rich Rebar, who stepped in for Pam. So we had a good bounce back week after having a poor week the prior week in the picks for the show. We'll show you that on a Friday show, but we do that on Friday. It's nothing but picks, college, NFL. But remember, if you want to get on board for free, go to sharp.football and you can get everything this week for free. All right, guys, thank you so much for everything, and we will see you on Friday. Go.